The alarm buzzed at 5:30 a.m., and for once, Kim Kardashian wasn't waking up to a team of makeup artists and stylists. Instead, she found herself staring at a simple black polo shirt and khaki pants laid out on her bed, the standard uniform of Walker's department store in Sherman Oaks. The outfit was arguably the most understated thing she'd worn in years. "Are you sure about this?" Corey Gamble, her security manager, asked for the 100th time since she'd announced her plan. "We can still call it off." Kim shook her head as she pulled her dark hair into a simple ponytail. "I need this, Corey. One day of normal life. Besides, hardly anyone shops at department stores at 6 a.m. The store's manager, Patricia Walker, had agreed to keep Kim's temporary employment secret from the other staff. As far as they knew, Katherine Smith was a new hire shadowing the morning shift supervisor, Angela. Only Patricia knew that Katherine was actually Kim Kardashian, who had reached out personally with an unusual request to experience life as a regular retail worker. The drive to the store was surreal. No paparazzi, no camera crew, just Kim in her modest outfit, trying to remember everything she'd learned during her brief training session the day before. She'd insisted on doing this properly, learning the register, understanding the return policy, memorizing the store layout. If she was going to be a retail worker, she was determined to be a good one. At 6:15 a.m., Kim stood in the employee entrance, clutching her borrowed name tag. Katherine Smith, it read in simple black letters. Her hand trembled slightly as she pinned it to her polo shirt. The morning supervisor, Angela, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair, greeted her with a warm smile. "First day jitters are normal, Katherine," Angela said, leading her through the back room. "We'll start you on Register 3. Morning shift is usually pretty quiet, perfect for training." The store was peaceful before opening, with only the soft hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sound of stock being unpacked. Kim followed Angela through the empty aisles, taking in the perfectly folded sweaters and methodically arranged housewares. It was strange seeing a store from this perspective, not as a shopper or a celebrity making an appearance, but as someone responsible for maintaining that order. "First thing we do is count the register," Angela explained, demonstrating the process. Kim paid careful attention, determined to master every detail. "Then we'll go through the morning checklist, making sure all the signs are correct, checking for any displaced merchandise." As they worked through the opening procedures, Kim found herself relaxing. There was something meditative about straightening hangers and aligning price tags. No cameras, no pressure to be on, just simple, straightforward tasks. The store opened at 7 a.m., and the first customers began trickling in. An elderly gentleman needed help finding compression socks. A young mother struggled with a stroller while looking at blouses. Kim helped them both, surprising herself with how much she enjoyed these simple interactions. "You're a natural," Angela commented after watching Kim successfully handle her first solo transaction, a young college student buying coffee makers for his dorm room. He'd been too sleepy to notice anything familiar about the clerk helping him. But Kim knew her anonymity couldn't last forever. Around 9 a.m., as she was reorganizing a display of designer handbags, and resisting the urge to comment on which ones she owned, she heard the whispers start. "Oh my God, is that? No way. But why would she be?" A teenage girl approached the counter, phone clutched tightly in her hand, eyes wide with disbelief. "Excuse me, are you?" Kim felt her heart rate quicken. This was the moment she'd been both expecting and dreading. She could deny it, stick to her cover story. But looking at the girl's hopeful expression, she made a different choice. "I'm just working here today," she said softly, offering a gentle smile. "Learning what it's like to be on the other side of the counter. Would you like to see our new arrivals and accessories?" The girl's jaw dropped, but before she could respond, a commotion erupted at the store's entrance. Word had somehow gotten out. A crowd was gathering, phones raised, faces pressed against the glass doors. Kim could see Corey tensing from his discreet position near the customer service desk. Angela rushed over, confusion evident on her face. "Katherine, what's happening? Why are there so many people suddenly?" Kim took a deep breath, She'd known this moment would come, but she hadn't expected it so soon. The quiet morning shift was about to become anything but quiet, and she had a choice to make: retreat to the safety of her celebrity bubble, or stay and face whatever challenges lay ahead. Looking at Angela's concerned face and the growing crowd outside, Kim straightened her name tag and made her decision. The real test of her experiment was just beginning, and she was determined to see it through, even if it meant dealing with the chaos that always seemed to follow her name. The store's phone started ringing. More customers were streaming in, many not even pretending to shop as they pulled out their phones. Kim could hear the familiar clicks of camera shutters, see the flashes reflecting off the store windows. "Angela," Kim said, turning to her supervisor, "I think there's something I need to tell you about your new employee." The morning shift was about to become a lot more interesting than anyone at Walker's department store had expected. Angela stood frozen, her hands still clutching the price gun she'd been using to mark down clearance items. You're Kim Kardashian," she stammered, looking back and forth between Kim and the growing crowd at the entrance. "I am," Kim admitted, straightening her modest polo shirt. "But today, I'm also Katherine Smith, your new employee. And I'd really like to keep working my shift, if that's okay." Before Angela could respond, Patricia Walker burst out of her office, phone in hand. "The local news vans just pulled into the parking lot," she announced, her face a mix of panic and amazement. "Kim, we need to get you out of here." But Kim had already made up her mind. "No," she said firmly, surprising everyone including herself. "I came here to experience a real day of retail work. Let's just try to make this work." Patricia and Angela exchanged uncertain glances, but there was something in Kim's determination that made them pause. After a quick huddle with Corey and the store's security team, they developed a plan. The doors opened, and the crowd surged in. But instead of retreating to the back office, Kim stayed right where she was, behind register 3, ready to help customers. "Welcome to Walker's," she said to the first person who approached, a young woman clutching a sweater and shaking with excitement. "Did you find everything you were looking for today?" The surreal scene that followed would later go viral on every social media platform. Kim Kardashian, one of the most famous women in the world, methodically scanning items, processing returns, and helping customers find the right sizes, all while dozens of phones recorded her every move. "The blue one brings out your eyes better," she advised a starstruck teenager trying on jackets. Years of fashion experience weren't going to waste, even if she was technically just a sales clerk today. But not everything ran smoothly. A heated argument broke out between two customers fighting over the last handbag that Kim had touched. A group of influencers staged an impromptu photo shoot in the shoe department, disrupting other shoppers. And then there was the middle-aged woman who demanded to speak to a manager about the circus this store has become. "Ma'am," Kim said, stepping in before Angela could intervene, "I understand your frustration. You came here to shop, not to deal with all this commotion." She gestured at the crowd around them. "Please, let me help you find what you need personally." The woman's angry expression faltered, caught off guard by Kim's sincere offer. I just needed to return these sheets. The thread count isn't what was advertised." "Let's take care of that right now," Kim said, leading her to the register. As she processed the return, she chatted with the woman about thread counts and textile quality, drawing from her own experience with her bedding line. By the end of the transaction, the previously irate customer was smiling and sharing pictures of her grandchildren. Around noon, during what was supposed to be her lunch break, Kim found herself in the break room with Angela and a few other employees. She'd insisted on eating the sandwich she'd packed rather than having her usual chef-prepared meal delivered. "I can't believe you're actually eating in our break room," said Marcus, a college student who worked part-time in electronics. "And that you know so much about our inventory system." Kim took a bite of her turkey sandwich, surprisingly hungry after the morning's chaos. "I studied really hard for this. I wanted to do it right." She paused, looking around the small room with its worn couch and humming vending machine. "Though I didn't expect quite this much excitement." "Are you sorry you came?" Angela asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. Kim considered the question carefully. The morning had been overwhelming in ways she hadn't anticipated. Yet there was something oddly refreshing about it all. Actually, no, she replied. This is exactly what I needed, just maybe not in the way I expected. A knock on the break room door interrupted their conversation. It was Patricia, looking flustered. Kim, we have a situation. A bus full of tourists just pulled up, and... She hesitated. There's a group of resellers who bought out almost our entire designer bag section. They're apparently planning to sell them online as touched by Kim Kardashian. Kim stood up, brushing crumbs from her khakis. Her brief respite was over, but rather than feeling daunted, she felt energized. Okay, let's handle this. But first, we need to implement a purchase limit per customer. I've seen this kind of thing before. As she headed back to the sales floor with Angela and Patricia, Kim caught a glimpse of herself in a mirror. Her ponytail was slightly messy now, her face showed signs of fatigue, and her polo shirt was decidedly untrendy. Yet somehow, she felt more like herself than she had in a long time. The afternoon stretched ahead, promising more chaos, more challenges, and more opportunities to experience life from this new perspective. Little did Kim know, the most extraordinary moments of her experiment were yet to come, and the lessons she would learn would be far different from what she'd imagined. And somewhere in the store, a customer was about to walk in with a story that would change everything about this already remarkable day. The afternoon rush was in full swing when Maria Rodriguez walked into Walker's department store. Unlike the crowds of excited fans and curious onlookers who had been streaming in all day, she didn't notice the commotion. Her eyes were fixed on a crumpled receipt in her hands, and her face bore the worn expression of someone carrying a heavy burden. Kim was helping reorganize the children's department, which had been thrown into disarray by the day's unusual traffic, when Angela called her over to the returns counter. Katherine, Angela said, still using Kim's alias despite everyone knowing her true identity by now, could you handle this return? I need to help Marcus with a delivery in the back. Kim nodded and approached the counter where Maria stood waiting. The woman was probably in her early 40s, dressed in medical scrubs that suggested she'd just finished a long shift. Hi, how can I help you today? Kim asked, noting how Maria hadn't looked up from her receipt. I need to return this dress, Maria said quietly, finally raising her eyes. She froze, recognition flickering across her face, but unlike everyone else that day, she didn't react with excitement. Instead, her eyes welled with tears. I'm sorry, Maria whispered, quickly wiping her eyes. I bought this dress 2 weeks ago for my daughter's quinceañera. But yesterday, we found out her father's cancer has spread. The medical bills, we had to cancel the party. I never even took the tags off. Kim felt her heart tighten. After a day of handling excited fans and staged encounters, this raw moment of real life hit her hard. Without thinking, she stepped around the counter. Tell me about your daughter, she said softly. Maria pulled out her phone, showing Kim a photo of a beaming teenage girl. This is Isabella. She's been so strong through everything. She didn't even cry when we told her about canceling the party. Just said she was grateful her papa was getting treatment. Kim glanced at the security cameras, then at Corey, who nodded slightly. She made a decision. Would you come with me for a moment? She asked Maria. Bring the dress. Kim led Maria to the store's alterations room, which had been closed off to handle the overflow of customers trying on clothes. Inside, away from the prying eyes and phone cameras, Kim finally felt like she could be completely genuine. I'm not just here for a publicity stunt, Kim said, gesturing for Maria to sit. I wanted to understand what real life is like for people who work and shop here. All day, I've been learning lessons I never expected. But meeting you, this is real life. Maria smoothed the plastic garment bag containing the dress. Isabella watches your shows. She always says you work so hard for your family, just like I do for mine. Kim reached for the dress bag. May I? Inside was a beautiful rose gold quinceañera dress, modest by Kim's standards but clearly chosen with love and care. The price tag showed it had been on sale, but still represented what must have been a significant investment for Maria's family. "How long have you been working at the hospital?" Kim asked, an idea forming in her mind. 12 years as a nurse in the oncology ward, Maria replied. "That's how we met Dr. Chen, Isabella's father's doctor. He's doing everything he can, but the experimental treatment isn't covered by insurance." Kim held up her hand. She'd heard enough. "Maria, I'd like to make you an offer, but first, I need you to understand something. This isn't charity, and it's not for publicity. Today, I'm just a store clerk who wants to help another mother." What happened next would never make it to social media, though rumors would circulate for months. The security cameras in the alterations room mysteriously malfunctioned during those 20 minutes. The only witnesses were Kim, Maria, and later, Patricia Walker, who was called in to help process some unusual paperwork. When Kim and Maria emerged from the alterations room, both had tear-stained faces but bright smiles. The dress remained at the store, but not as a return. Instead, it was marked for alterations, with a delivery date set for 2 weeks later. The afternoon crowd had thinned somewhat, but phones still turned to record Kim as she walked Maria to the exit. Just before leaving, Maria turned and hugged Kim fiercely. "Thank you," she whispered, "for being exactly the person my daughter believes you are." As Maria left, Angela approached with a concerned look. "Everything okay?" That return took a while. "It wasn't a return," Kim said, watching Maria's figure disappear into the parking lot. "It was a reminder of why I came here today." The events of that afternoon would have far-reaching consequences that none of them could have predicted. But for now, Kim had to return to her register. The afternoon shift was only half over, and there were more customers to help, more lessons to learn, and more moments that would challenge her understanding of what it meant to be both a celebrity and a human being. And somewhere in the city, a teenage girl named Isabella was about to receive an unexpected phone call that would change everything. The late afternoon sun slanted through Walker's department store's windows, casting long shadows across the sales floor. Kim's feet ached in her sensible shoes, a far cry from her usual designer heels, as she restocked shelves in the home goods department. Her encounter with Maria had shifted something in her, and the rest of the store seemed to feel it too. The crowds hadn't disappeared, but they'd changed. Word had somehow spread about the mysterious meeting in the alterations room, though no one knew exactly what had transpired. Speculation ran wild on social media, but for once, Kim wasn't checking her phone. She was too busy living in the moment. "Katherine," Angela called out, still sticking to the alias even though it had become something of an inside joke among the staff. "Could you help in the fitting rooms? We've got a situation." Kim found a group of teenage girls huddled in the fitting room area, all of them wearing hospital volunteer lanyards. One of them stepped forward, her hands trembling slightly. We work with Nurse Rodriguez in oncology," she said. "We heard what you did for Isabella." The girl paused, gathering courage. "We have other kids in the ward. They're fighting so hard, and their families are struggling too." Kim felt her throat tighten. Of course, the hospital volunteers would have heard about Maria. She glanced at the clock, still 2 hours left in her shift, then at Corey, who was already on his phone, anticipating her needs as always. "Tell me about these families," Kim said, pulling out the notepad she'd been using to track inventory. For the next 30 minutes, she listened as the volunteers shared stories of courage, struggle, and hope from the oncology ward. Meanwhile, the regular work of the store continued around them. Marcus needed help with a difficult customer in electronics. A shipment of autumn merchandise needed to be logged in. Kim moved between these mundane tasks and the extraordinary circumstances she'd created, finding an unexpected rhythm in the chaos. At 5:45 p.m., just as Kim was preparing to help close out her register, Patricia rushed over with her phone. "Kim, you need to see this." Local news stations had picked up the story, but not in the way anyone expected. Instead of focusing on Kim's presence at the store, they were running a piece about the oncology ward at Maria's hospital. Somehow, an anonymous source had arranged for a significant donation of medical equipment, specifically for experimental cancer treatments. The cameras showed Isabella, Maria's daughter, being interviewed outside the hospital. She was wearing scrubs. Apparently, she volunteered in the children's ward on weekends. "My mom always taught me that when you can't have something you want, you should find a way to help others instead," Isabella was saying. "So maybe we can't have a quinceañera right now, but seeing these kids get the treatment they need? That's better than any party." Kim watched the footage, her vision blurring slightly. She hadn't known about Isabella's volunteer work when she'd made her arrangements earlier. But now, "Patricia," Kim said, turning to the store manager, "I need to make one more transaction before we close. The registers are all ready." Patricia started, then saw Kim's expression. "Of course. Whatever you need." Kim pulled out her phone and made a quick call. Then she turned to the group of young volunteers who were still lingering nearby, hoping for a photo with her. "How would you all like to help me with something?" she asked. "It's not glamorous, actually. It's going to involve a lot of heavy lifting and staying past closing time. But I think it might be important." For the next hour, after the store had officially closed, Kim and a team of volunteers transformed the store's special events room. Racks were moved, lights were adjusted, and garment bags appeared mysteriously at the loading dock. Through it all, Kim worked alongside everyone else, her celebrity status forgotten in the focused effort of their task. At 7:30 p.m., as the last details were being finalized, Kim received a text that made her smile. Everything was falling into place, but there was still one more crucial piece to arrange. "Angela," she called out to her supervisor, who was helping to organize the transformed space. "Remember how this morning you said I had a natural talent for retail?" Angela nodded, wiping sweat from her forehead. "Best trainee I've ever had, even with all the chaos. How would you feel about having me back tomorrow?" "Not as Katherine Smith this time. Just as me." Before Angela could respond, they were interrupted by the sound of the store's front doors opening. Kim checked her watch and smiled. Right on time. Isabella Rodriguez stood in the doorway, still in her hospital volunteer scrubs, looking confused. Behind her, Maria clutched an envelope, the same one Kim had handed her in the alterations room hours earlier. "Mom?" Isabella asked, "Why are we back at the store?" "It's closed." Kim stepped forward, no longer a store clerk, but not quite her usual celebrity self either. She had become something else today, something that straddled both worlds. "Isabella," she said warmly, "I heard you've been taking care of others instead of worrying about your own celebration. Your mom told me that's just who you are." She gestured to the transformed event room behind her. "So I think it's time someone took care of you." The doors opened again, and more people began to enter. Kim's smile widened. The night shift at Walker's department store was about to become something no one would ever forget. The transformed events room of Walker's department store glowed with soft lighting as Isabella Rodriguez stood frozen in the doorway. The space had been turned into something magical, racks of clothing replaced with elegant displays, fluorescent lights dimmed in favor of twinkling strands that created a warm, intimate atmosphere. But it wasn't just the room that had been transformed. Standing in neat rows were Isabella's fellow hospital volunteers, no longer in their scrubs but dressed in formal attire that Kim's team had somehow procured in the last hour. At the center of it all was a dress form displaying Isabella's rose gold quinceañera dress, now adorned with subtle alterations that made it even more beautiful. "I don't understand," Isabella whispered, looking between her mother and Kim. "We cancelled." "Plans change," Kim said softly, stepping forward. "Your mom told me how you've spent every weekend for the past year volunteering in the children's ward, even while your own father was receiving treatment. How you gave up your quinceañera without complaint because you understood that family comes first." Maria stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. "Mi amor, remember what you said in your interview today? About helping others instead of having a party?" She reached for the envelope Kim had given her earlier. "Well, sometimes life surprises you with both." Inside the envelope were two things: a receipt showing that Isabella's dress had been paid for in full, with a note declaring it non-refundable, and a second document that made Isabella's hands shake when she read it. The hospital's experimental treatment program. She looked up at Kim in disbelief. It's been fully funded? For all the patients? Kim nodded. Anonymous donors can work quickly when properly motivated. Your father's treatment is covered, along with everyone else in the program. But that's tomorrow's news. Tonight. She gestured to the transformed space. Tonight is about celebrating you. The doors opened again, and more people streamed in. Dr. Chen, Isabella's father's oncologist, wearing a suit instead of his usual white coat. Nurses from the ward, patients who were well enough to attend, families who had become like extended relatives during long hospital stays. Even some of the customers who had been in the store earlier had returned, carrying gifts and food. It's not exactly a traditional quinceañera, Kim admitted. We had to improvise a bit with the timing and location. But sometimes the best celebrations are the unexpected ones. Angela stepped forward, no longer just a department store supervisor but now part of something larger. We're keeping the store open late tonight, just for this. And a few of us. She glanced at her fellow employees who had stayed to help. We've learned some traditional dances. If you'll teach us the rest. Isabella's father appeared in the doorway, supported by a nurse but standing proud. Mi pequeña, he said, opening his arms to his daughter. Ready for your father-daughter dance? The next few hours passed like a dream. The department store sound system played traditional quinceañera music mixed with modern hits. The cafe staff, who had stayed late voluntarily, served refreshments. Customers who had come to see Kim Kardashian ended up joining in the celebrations, learning dance steps from Isabella's relatives and sharing stories of their own family traditions. Kim found herself moving between roles, sometimes helping to serve food, other times adjusting the dress she'd helped save, occasionally stepping in to show someone how to properly walk in their newly acquired heels. She was neither fully the celebrity nor the store clerk anymore, but something in between that felt surprisingly authentic. Near the end of the night, as the celebrations were winding down, Isabella approached Kim, who was folding clothes that had been displaced during the impromptu party. I watch your show sometimes, Isabella said, smoothing her dress. People think they know you, but they don't really see you, do they? Just like they don't really see us, the patients, the families, the people who work regular jobs. Until they do. Kim paused in her folding, struck by the wisdom in the young girl's words. I came here thinking I would learn about normal life, she admitted. But there's no such thing, is there? Every life is extraordinary when you take the time to really look. As the last guests began to leave, Kim found herself back behind register 3, where her day had started. She ran one final transaction, a gift receipt for Isabella's dress, marked not for return or exchange. For memory only. Patricia approached with Kim's personal belongings from the break room. So, the store manager said with a knowing smile, about tomorrow. I meant what I said, Kim replied, unpinning her Katherine Smith name tag. I'd like to come back. Maybe not as a regular employee, but walkers could use a community outreach program. Something that helps us see the extraordinary in the ordinary. Later that night, after the store had been cleaned and locked up, Kim sat in her car in the empty parking lot, still wearing her polo shirt and sensible shoes. Her phone had hundreds of notifications, but for once, she didn't feel compelled to check them immediately. Instead, she thought about everything that had happened, the morning's chaos, the afternoon's revelation, and the evening's celebration. She thought about Maria's courage, Isabella's wisdom, and all the small moments of genuine connection she'd experienced throughout the day. She pulled out her own store receipt from that morning, her first transaction as Katherine Smith, and carefully folded it into her wallet. Some souvenirs weren't meant for social media. Some experiences changed you in ways that couldn't be captured in a photo or tweet. Tomorrow, she would return to her life of glamour and cameras. But something would be different. She had learned that the most meaningful moments often happened away from the spotlight, in the simple interactions between people who took the time to really see each other. As she finally started her car to head home, Kim smiled at her reflection in the rearview mirror. Her makeup had worn off hours ago, her ponytail was messy, and her polo shirt was wrinkled. She had never felt more beautiful. The next morning, Walker's department store opened as usual at 7 a.m. But things were subtly different. The store had been transformed not by its brief brush with celebrity, but by the reminder that every person who walked through its doors had their own extraordinary story. And somewhere in the back office, a new name tag was being prepared. This one didn't say Katherine Smith. It simply read Kim, no last name needed. After all, some of the best stories are about people, not titles.
Tell us in the comments what part of this story impressed you the most. If you liked it, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next videos. See you in the world of incredible events.